everybody, Adam from Atlas Gunworks. We're doing part 3 of the mag tuning, or mag building I should say, videos. And we're going to talk about the base pads a little bit, and we're going to talk a lot about followers and springs. So a mag tube and a follower and spring are all a system, and the dimensions internally of the tube and the shape and how the follower works with the spring is what's going to make these things reliable. So if we take a detailed look at how the bullets stack up here in the double stack, they're stacking up here at a pretty good angle. And where that follower sits on this rail makes a big difference. And then how the follower is able to keep pressure up. So all this is really doing is moving down and then pushing up all the time. And if you get a little hiccup where the spring pressure, this is bound up, or these are often you'll see these bullets can get just left and right of each other, or some weird situation. We almost have that going on up here with this tilted bullet. So get in there and you can see kind of that bullet's all tilted up. So what happens is, as those scenarios are weird, the spring pressure isn't enough. Well, if the spring pressure is not enough and the slide comes down, this bullet's going to dive right into the ramp. We need massive spring pressure. So there's an easy test for that. What we want is the scenario that we're seeing. We'll test this. Well, we want the bullets to stack on the top two right on top of each other with no gap. I'll put a little more light on this. See if we can. It's going to be hard, I think, to see this, but I want this bullet to be sitting directly on this bullet. When there's a gap, when it's pointed and there's a big space between those two in the front, that's not going to work well. That won't. We can just tell you that won't feed well right from. You won't even need to test it. That's going to be a problem mag. So we'll look at that when we get to the end. But these are all a system, and the tube dimensions have to be correct first. Then we have to get a follower that matches that tube setup. So like these STI or the new style, we cut this one up so we could see what was going on, but we have yet to find a system that works well for these. So where does that leave us? 2017. So the fall of 2017, SV still makes the best internal dimension tubes. They still need a bunch of work to get them to work as a system the way we want, but the internal dimensions of the tubes are good, the best today. So until that changes, these are definitely your most premium trusted mags, and we can get mag sets like this to work 100%. Throw in some of those other companies, MBX or whoever, and you might get a mag that works 99% of the time, but not 100. So we want a goal is 100. So where do we do? Or where do we go from here? What do we do next? We need to find a follower. So, a couple of choices. You have the Terran followers and springs. That's a system. Don't run his stuff all together, or run the Graham system all together. So Graham spring and follower. Replace with their own spring, not with someone else's spring. Once I get a follower matted to a tube, they're a pair forever. I won't mix and match followers and tubes. I'll just keep that follower with that tube until the follower's worn out, which is a lot of rounds. You shouldn't see much of that. If you're running an old style STI 9mm, you'll need a Graham's FKS or FK9S because it's shorter to offset for that spacer in there. All the other mags after that, you won't need the spacer, so no problems there. So, mag goes in, or follower and spring go in there, all looks good, we got good movement, goes to the top, that's our first check, and this seems fine, goes right up to the top. Alright, now, most of you are running guns that don't lock back. If you do, you're going to leave this step here, but mostly what you want to do, and I just did it on this one on a wheel, is trim that step off. What you're looking for is that when this is all together, I want to put it in the gun, open the gun up. Again, this will be a little bit hard to see, but let's see if we can get a light in here. You won't be able to see it, but in here, you'll see your slide stops right there. So my slide stop's right here, and I want to make sure that the front of the follower clearances that slide stop, so it doesn't hang up on it at all. And then this gun won't lock back. This gun, we also trim the slide stop, so this gun won't. Even if you were running this follower, it wouldn't stop it. So we'll do maybe some later videos on trying to get the slide stops to work. The lock back on the last round. The issue with that is that as these tubes hit the ground, this area down here changes, the dimension changes quite often, and then that changes where this lip sits, and if it sits up too high, it'll lock back with one round, and if it sits too low, it won't. These are hard to make work super reliable over a long period of time that way. And it's a little bit easier if you use the big followers. Some of the guys have those super reliable big followers with a step in a little bit deeper spot. The problem with those is that you're going to give up some capacity. So for the race guns and the guys who want to get max capacity, we all skip that. So I would recommend no lockback. Lockback's more trouble than it's worth. So how do we get there? The Terrans have a sharp point here that I just took off. You can do this with a Dremel or whatever. This is just Delron. It shouldn't be a wheel, anything. So get it so it clearances. We got that part down. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put bullets in here, and we're going to check two things. We'll do two things. Check that the bullets are stacking correctly, and we're going to check that on the top the bullets are stacked up the way we want, and we're not going to get a big dive out of the bullet. So we're gonna load this to capacity. That's going to set the spring. So anytime you build a mag brand new, the first thing you do is just load it all the way up to max capacity, and then you don't have to do anything else. Doesn't have to sit overnight. Doesn't have to do anything crazy. Just load it up once. Probably doesn't hurt to load it up to max capacity the first bunch of times, but once is the big deal, because you're gonna get a spring set in that. So as we're going, I'm gonna keep testing. See if you guys can see that. That's pretty. Well, let's zoom in here. I'm gonna try some different tricks here so you can see, but there we go. That bullet. I just gotta get it to focus. Alright everybody, we're back. We're trying to get the right camera angle here, but I think I sort of got it. See how those two bullets are touching each other? That's what we're looking for. So I want that all the way through. You know, those two cases. We'll see if I can do this with one hand. Right there. I'm holding the flashlight in my mouth, but that's the spot where we want the cases to touch. So, if those cases are touching right there, that's going to be an indicator that this system should work just the way we want it. So, we're past 10 rounds, and it's doing that. That's good. I'm going to keep an eye on that as we go. Alright, we're at 23 rounds. They touch. I'm going to strip off the first round. Make sure it's still touching. That mag, I could just tell you right now, is going to fit. That's pretty much what you need to see. So set your spring and see what you see. So this is a 9mm. And then again, I'm going to do the same test I did when I tuned the feed lips. I'm not sure the feed lips on this gun are adjusted, on this mag are adjusted yet. No, they are. You know, I'm going to make sure the follower is doing its job. It's pushing the rounds up there. You should be able to bench test them like that, and they should feed at not quite full speed. So that's one that works. That's really all you have to do on the follower setup. Now, can you break all the edges on the followers and make them smoother? Yeah, but what I do is once you've run them for a bit, and if they've got some burrs or start seeing the plastic chafe up or something, just clean that up with a little baby file or something. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. These better ones from Terran and Graham seem to work just fine. Now, in contrast to that, so that's an SV with a Grams that worked nicely. This is a 40 cal new STI tube. I'm just going to show you. This isn't a follower problem as much as it's a tube problem, but there is potentially a follower that would work with this tube. I don't know if it exists or if anybody can figure it out, but so I don't know if we'll be able to get here. We're going to try real hard though. So here we go. We're going to zoom in on that. There we go. Focus. Bear with me 1 second here. We back this up. See that huge gap? This won't feed. So there's 20, I think, in this one. We'll back up the camera here. We'll refocus. Alright. I haven't done videos in a while, guys. Bear with me. So, of course, for the video purposes, this one fed, but... Oh, there you go, it didn't, but... what happens is when that slide comes back, it catches this, and when there's not enough spring pressure, that boom, and it hits the ramp and goes. So you see a lot of that when the tube dimensions are incorrect. And some of the manufacturers for the tubes are, you know, they're so close on the numbers. I would tell you that STI has got this going on with the new style tubes at the end of 2017. All the tubes we've seen have been like this. Some of them are okay and some of them aren't. But as a consumer, what do you want to buy? 20 tubes and try to return the ones that don't work? It's a problem. And what you see, like that mag fed, but this mag does not work. It's not reliable. You couldn't go out and shoot a match with it. So sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, but lots of problems caused by that diving. So let's just talk for 1 minute about about base pads. For matches, I think you really need a base pad that's got a no tool deal. So any of the ones with the push pins work good. You'll see an Atlas one later this year, probably Christmas time. So that matters. Having a tool to take it apart, like an Allen key, or the Dawson toolless ones we're not fans of, because as soon as you get a little sand in there, you have to bang it on a bench to get it open. So any of the ones with the push button seem to work better. What are the other considerations? Well, one, it has to be the right size to fit in the gauge. We'll do a whole another video on the gauge fitting, but the other consideration is that it fits good, it slides on, different ones at different times. Remember, these tubes are always a little different. These base pads are always a little different. So made by two different companies, get some tolerance stacking, sometimes they don't fit. And I couldn't find one in this last batch, but if this goes on and won't start like that, you know, you go and it stops just as soon as you start, usually just a little whack, couple whacks with the hammer to tighten this up, and that'll go right on with the SV tubes. That's pretty common. On occasion you have to trim this or break some edges here, but not that often. Usually just a hammer whack will get you there. So the other part about the base pads you got to know is how thin they are. So some of them, to get the extra capacity, get really thin and they dent up and wear out a little quicker. To me, they're a wear item. It's not that big a deal. I'll just take the ones that I like. But keep that. That's a factor when you're buying them. If you're buying for SV tubes, you're going to run a 3mm Terran. If you run the Terrans, and then some of the other brands, you got to know what you're getting, but they got to fit in the gauge. So there'll be, again, another whole video on that, but make sure that you get the right one. The 4mm go over the gauge with the SV tubes. So we tend to run the Terran 3mm today. We'll have our own base pad here pretty shortly. That is about all you need to know about followers on the setup. Springs. Talk about this a lot because it's super important. I do this. I tend to run the Graham springs and followers, and I change them twice a year. So my season really starts April, May. I change them coming into the season, run them till about mid-season, so June, July, and then the majors are coming up again in maybe August. Well, whenever they start, 2 weeks before 3 weeks before the majors, I'll put fresh springs in, run all those mags at practice, make sure they're good for a couple weeks, recheck my feed lips, and then go to majors. And if you're going to majors with springs that are pretty fresh, inside 3-4 months, you should be good. MBX mags do that a lot more. The Terran springs tend to last just a little less time than the Grahams. But that's the follower part, and follower part's probably pretty simple if you put a good follower with a good tube. Hope to see you guys on the range soon.